Darling Lee, and I am going live here from London in my offices here at PA Consulting. And I have a colleague in the room. Just come over here, Elliot. Say hi to everyone. There's
Hello,
Elliot.
good
Hello. He's in our marketing department, and just invited him, and other people are watching the stream here behind us. And so the thing I wanted to talk about today is about authentic purpose. And so I encourage you to comment and to share, how are you using purpose in your organization? How are you practicing authentic purpose? Because so many companies have a mission statement, we have values, we have a purpose statement. It's expressed in many different ways, but how do we live it? How do we have it so that it's just not something you have on a wall or in a PowerPoint presentation, but it is meaningful and is seen as credible and seen as authentic? And so many people are pointing at companies and saying, you know, you may be talking about sustainability, you may be talking about being 1.5 degree kind of company, but you're just greenwashing. You're sort of whitewashing, greenwashing everything so that you have this sense that you're doing something bigger than yourselves as leaders and as organizations, but you don't really mean it. It's unauthentic. So today I want to talk about how using purpose, how do you have it become something authentic? And a major reason for this is because we recently put together a report, and it is a wonderful report about a new way to lead. Let me try to show it to you. Yeah, it's this report here, and you can see it at our site, paconsulting.com. Yeah, actually, if you just go to paconsulting.com, you'll see it on the homepage there. And one of the findings was that companies who are authentically leading, who have authentic purpose at the core of what they're doing, are becoming more effective leaders. And I want to talk a little bit about what does it mean to have a purpose and what does it mean to be authentic. And one of the things that I was looking at is that, again, especially right now, there's so many things going on. Companies are speaking about a range of issues, ranging from the need for looking at DEI, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, sustainability, equity in terms of wages, and the cost of living is becoming astronomical, especially in the face of inflation. And then also, what does it mean to be fair and equitable in our supply chain? Because all of these issues talk about all the different stakeholders we have in our organizations, not just shareholders, not just the people who own stock or equity in a company. It's really much more about who are all the different stakeholders and how do we serve them in a way that is authentic to what we're trying to do as an organization. And so oftentimes the purpose statement is this high and mighty, beautiful vision of how we want to live, how we want to be working in the world. And the issue is, it doesn't really become authentic and meaningful until it gets hard. Because it's when it's hard, when you're making trade-offs, that you are actually beginning to see and live the purpose. Because until then, it's just an idea. But until you truly live it, you can't actually say that you're authentically living that purpose. So what I think that authenticity of leadership and purpose becomes really powerful is when it's put to the test. So here are some examples. Are you willing to invest in sustainability when it costs more? Are you willing to go in and make investments even if there isn't a short-term gain? Are you willing to turn down work because it isn't in line with what you want to do? We're seeing people making investments in sustainability, in getting to carbon neutral. We see people getting out of businesses, out of the areas of work, putting a stake in the ground. For example, when North Carolina passed trans laws about trans people being able to use bathrooms, some businesses said, we're not going to do business anymore in that state. And we're seeing it with the most recent announcement for the Supreme Court with Roe v. Wade, the rescinding of that decision, that some companies are saying and putting on the line that we're going to make sure that people have fair and equal access to healthcare, no matter what that means. So when does it make sense when we decide to actually make these choices that actually make a difference to our communities, because it's when it's hard that it's really meaningful. So I would love for you to share, when do you actually practice authentic purpose? When are you putting your leadership on the line? When does it get hard? Where are the instances when you've had to do this? So a couple things. When you talk about authentic purpose, one of the definitions I found really, really meaningful is it explains your reason for existence. Why are you here? Why are you here as a person? What's your purpose? Why is your organization here? Why does it exist? What kind of impact do you want to have in the world? And if we say it's just to maximize shareholder value, that isn't enough anymore. We have to have a strong enough reason to say, why do we ask our employees to come to work every day? Why do we ask our customers to buy our products and services? The reason it's basically answering the question, why? And why matters. Here's some statistics. The Edelman Trust Barometer in 2021 found that 68% of consumers believe they have the power to force corporations to change because of their purchasing power, and that 86% of people expect CEOs to speak out on societal issues. So if we're not speaking out, if we're not taking a stand on the issues that are important to our customers, then we are letting them down. And we also found from some research that, this is coming from Deloitte, that price and quality, while they're still really the most important top two reasons why people buy products, right behind that, we see a connection to purpose. Some interesting statistics. 57% of consumers globally say that they will be more loyal to brands that commit to addressing social inequalities. A third of consumers 25 and younger, again, the Gen Z that are coming up, see sustainability as a top criteria for beauty and personal care products and when they purchase them. And nearly 9 out of 10 consumers, according to our Cone Wolf study, say they're willing to take action to reward a brand for its authenticity. And 52% say they would recommend a brand to others. And 49% say they would pledge loyalty to a brand that they saw as authentic. So the reality is it drives growth. And one of the things I just wanted to share, this one slide that I thought was really particularly interesting. This again comes from Deloitte. They did a study that looked at the companies who were growing 10% faster than everybody else. I'll make this a little bigger so you can see it. And 58% versus 33% of people who had negative growth said that purpose was guiding their employee decision-making, meaning that this is not something that only the executives cared about. Purpose was driving the things that people do every single day. And that it's not on this chart here, but that 93% of the people who had, again, that plus 10% growth had KPIs that they published publicly, talking about how they were doing against their purpose, versus 72% of the people who were experiencing negative growth who actually did this. So they were not only saying, here's our purpose, how we are living it, they were measuring it and then holding themselves accountable when they actually did it and when they were falling short. So I would love for you, again, if you're there, to share where you're coming from, how your purpose is being lived today, and also just any examples that you have of companies that you admire that they are doing a great job of sharing their purpose in a very authentic way. So what I thought I'd do today is just share a little bit about some examples. I've got a bunch of them, because what's interesting about them is that they don't just say their purpose. Their purpose statements and how they act on them are very, very keyed back into how they see themselves working and walking through the world. And it's so interesting because they all have different stakeholders, different things they want to emphasize. It isn't just about climate and sustainability. It isn't just about equity. It's about so many different things that these companies have decided are very real and authentic to who they are and how they want to be in the world. So let me give you a couple examples of them. This is one that we highlighted in our report. This is from a Swedish company called Haglofs. They are an outdoor company, so they make gear, they make clothing. And one of the things they realized is that they really hated this overconsumption and and consumption that wasn't purpose driven, like trying to be outside. And so they especially targeted Black Fridays. And they said, we're not going to have sales anymore on Black Fridays. They said, we're going to actually raise our prices to discourage people buying on Black Fridays. They said, we're actually maybe even just going to sell secondhand items. And they finally just said, none of this is working. We're just done. What they said is, we're done giving any attention to the most aggressively sales-focused day of the year. So they said, we're going to be closed. We're closing on Black Fridays, which is a day that many retailers say this is the day that we move into the black, which is why it's called Black Friday. They said, we're not even going to operate that day. We're just closing down and we're going to go outside. In line again with their purpose of encouraging people and enabling people to go outside. So I thought that was a really interesting example, and that's one that we highlighted in that report. Another one that I wanted to share is from Dove, and this has been around for a decade now. This is Dove's Real Beauty campaign, where they showed many different models of beauty. And what they said is beauty should be a source of confidence, not anxiety. And so they show people in their real beauty, not fashion models, perfect bodies and perfect faces, but the reality of what beauty looks like. And over a decade, their revenues grew from 2.5 billion to 4 billion, in many ways driven by the visibility of this campaign. And people really rewarded Dove because they said, okay, this is a brand that I can live with, I love, because it's making me feel confident in my own beauty. Another one that I really like is Patagonia. Again, a company like Haglofs, long associated with different types of purpose, and especially with the environment. And they said that building the best product, causing no unnecessary harm, using business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And one of the things they developed was their wornwear.com program. And it's a way to encourage people to buy used clothing from Patagonia, to swap it, how to take care of it, also how to trade it in, recycle it for new gear. And they're encouraging people to make their gear last as long as possible. So you think about the value prop to Patagonia, the unique selling proposition is our stuff is built to last for decades. And in the meantime, we encourage you to make it last for decades, potentially keeping people from buying more of the product. So in some ways, this doesn't seem to make sense from a economic quarterly sales point of view, but it is absolutely in line with their brand proposition, the value proposition. Just two other quick examples here. This is from a company, a software vendor called Buffer. They do social media management. And one of the things they did almost 10 years ago, starting in 2013, is they started publishing the salaries of every single person who worked there. In the beginning, it was just 8 people, and it was a way to recruit people in a very competitive environment to come and work at Buffer. Why would somebody go work at a company where everybody knows your salaries? Well, they believe in just radical transparency, that if we are completely transparent about how we run our company and how we work with each other, then there's no sense that things are not being done fairly. So from an equity perspective, from a diversity and inclusion, they were being really clear that we have pay equity. We don't have big disparities between the top of the organization and the bottom of the organization. And it is completely transparent. So you know what you're getting into. And also this type of relationship they wanted to have with people, very, very authentic. And then one other example here that I have is Chobani. Again, yogurt, right? And what I love is they have this saying, a cup of yogurt won't change the world, but how we make it might. And the things that they do, for example, is they invest in their communities. They're constantly looking in the immediate community around their factory and investing in education, investing in job training, and then also with their employees, making sure they have great healthcare, making sure that they are completely invested in how they are treated inside the manufacturing environment. So again, it's not, again, they're very sustainability oriented, but they have a strong focus on the stakeholders of employees and the community. So I just want to go and show a couple examples, because when we think about purpose and authenticity, the purpose of who we're serving, how it ties back to people, to the stakeholders you have, can be really, really different. There isn't one unique way to do that. So we have one comment here. We have it from Mario. So Mario shares authenticity in the sense where deep intent and value is strong enough that it manifests through sincere action. I love that, Mario. Sincere, authentic action, regardless of the perceived optics, which often may not always guarantee coherence between the two. Okay, it may not always make sense, but focusing on the intent over simply perceived optics, that's beautiful. And Mario, I'm glad you really enjoy those themes, those examples. I'm glad that you found them really helpful. One of the things that I really like, Mario, what you're saying is that you may not always be communicating completely. People may not be understanding it, but you understand it. It feels authentic to you. And I think this is a really important part, that to be authentic, it has to feel right. It has to feel aligned with what you're trying to create, and in particular, the stakeholders that you are trying to engage and involve. And I want to go into a little bit about the actions that you can take, because as you know, my streams always have a little bit of framework and understanding about things, examples, but I really want to give you some very concrete things that you can do to start making it, first of all, identifying your purpose, and then very much in particular, living it in an authentic way. So the first one is create that why. Why do you exist? And it's got to be bigger than the quarterly profits that you return to shareholders. Why does your business exist? What impact is it going to have? And one easy way to do this is to examine each of the stakeholders that you serve. You have customers, you have employees, you have your community, we have the planet, we have your supply chain and value chain. How are we thinking about all of these different stakeholders? Where are our strengths that we can play to, where we really want to zero in and say, this is why we exist. These are places where we're going to make an impact in terms of the why of the work that we do. And it's more than just creating a product, making a profit. It's how do we deliver and engage with people? So, Sun, I love this comment coming in from you. The purpose of an organization needs to first be defined considering the role of all stakeholders. And again, I'm kicking off a research project on how do you do stakeholder capitalism. It's going to be 3 years this August, which in 2019, the Business Roundtable announced that the purpose of an organization is to maximize stakeholder value, not shareholder value. So I think, Sanjay, your comment here is really well noted, that you have to take into account all of these different things. This would take organizations higher in true sense of sustainable basis. And I think you also make a really good point, Sanjay, that sustainability isn't just about climate. It's about all of these other things around equity, about poverty, about hunger, about education, especially of women, that allow us to have a sustained potential future for humankind, frankly. And how are we putting that first and foremost to think about how we can create a sustainable business is how we have an authentic purpose. So the first thing I would say in terms of action is to think about your purpose in the context of your stakeholders. The next thing I would say is think about how you're going to make that happen then. Because what are you going to actually do if you have your why? Then what are you going to decide to do? What small steps will you take? What actions and impact will you actually deliver? And then third thing is to align the KPIs, the key performance indicators. What are you going to report on consistently? What will you make public internally? What will you make public externally? And align those back to your business, create that accountability, because when you have transparency on what's working and what's not, what's that gap, how are you going to make it up? It's not always about hitting your goals. It's also about saying, you're not quite hitting them. Haglofs, the company I talked about in the very first example, the outdoor gear company from Sweden, they're very keen on sustainability around climate change in particular. And they called themselves on it. They said, we talk about climate change, how we're going to be net zero and minimize our impact, be a 1.5 degree company. And honestly, we were doing that just by buying offsets. We were going to hit that goal just simply by doing that. And that's not enough. We need to make cuts. We need to cut our emissions. We need to look at this. We're holding ourselves accountable. And they showed their numbers, how they were hitting their goal in 2021 and 2022 by offsets, but it wasn't enough. So they were holding themselves accountable internally and externally. And by doing that, holding themselves up to a higher level of purpose and authenticity in order to make that happen. And the response from their customers and employees was, thank goodness, we're so glad that you're being transparent about this, being honest about it, being authentic about it, about not just talking about the places where you're succeeding, but also being honest about, yeah, this is really hard. And we're going to make some significant changes that cost money. And we're happy and very willing to do this. So the first three things, create that why, determine how you're going to do it, and then make sure you measure the heck out of it and be transparent about that. And the fourth thing I would encourage you to do, and I'd love to hear from you about how you're actually doing this, is to make your purpose something that you do every single day. And as a leader, that means putting it up front and center in everything that you do, everything that you say. It's making time for it, to talk about it, creating space, starting meetings with it, putting it as your first slide in your presentations. And one of the things I wanted to share is something that I was very excited about coming to PA Consulting is that our purpose statement is we use the power of ingenuity to build a positive human future. And my personal purpose statement is catalyzing transformation to maximize human potential. So a lot of alignment between these two things. So it just felt really good to come to work and know that the purpose of an organization that I'm working for is very aligned with how I want to exist in the world. But what has amazed me is that we talk about it constantly. It is the first slide in every single one of our presentations, internally and publicly with our clients. It was the thing that we spent an entire day of 3 days talking about it at our recent global partner meeting. The first time we've gotten together in years, and the very first thing we talk about is purpose. So when you truly live the purpose, then you use it to not just talk about it, but you're using it to make these really hard choices. And being on a leadership team, I can absolutely say we talk about it in every single meeting, and we use it to guide how we're making really tough decisions about where we will invest in, where we will pull back from. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is to hear from people how they do it. So I have a couple other comments here. So Sanjay has another one here. Organization's purpose can be defined if we can understand purpose of our life as guiding a map to cover. And Rania says, being clear about one's purpose and aligning it with the collective purpose of the company and knowing what drives everyone to help connect with others. That's how she's actually seeing having purpose be lived authentically in the organization. And Anoop has a comment here on KPIs. Absolutely right. Keep focus on the KPIs. It's one of the most important factors to sustain performances, even helpful to maintain personal and professional life balance. Anoop, if you can just put a little bit more comments into the feed here, would love to hear just a little bit more detail about how the KPIs are helping you life balance, because that's something new that I've never seen before. Al has a good question. Thank you, Al, for this question. Is the purpose and purpose statement similar to the organization's identity? So if you think about brand as the identity of an organization, absolutely, because purpose can be used to be infused into the brand. A brand is basically what people say about you when you're not in the room. So you can express your brand, but the actual value of the brand as perceived by your customers, your employees, your stakeholders, your shareholders, is how do they see it? How do they explain what you stand for? What are you famous for? What do you do? Why do you exist? And purpose, I believe, has to be at the center of what that brand is. Because if you can't understand and express that consistently about why you exist, but the impact you want to have on those stakeholders, how they explain that story and tell that story from their perspectives, then what does it mean? Do you stand for great quality, low prices? But how much more is there? Because so many other people are doing those things too as well. And Sanjay says, like a vision statement, purpose statement should be written. They have to write it out, because unless it's written down, it doesn't exist, right? So we hear this so much from people. And I think, especially with COVID, we really went back to why are we doing this? It really gave us that moment to pause, to think about, why are we doing this? Why are we leaving our homes, going to work? How are we connecting with each other in our workplaces? How are we treating each other? How do we treat our customers? How much profit should we be making? And how much should we be distributing it back to our stakeholders, either in lower prices or more community support that we can have to invest in the long term? These are all really hard questions to answer. And there's no better way to begin to answer those questions than to make sure you're really clear about your purpose. And be examining that, looking at it over and over again on a daily basis to remember, this is why we're here. This is the way we get aligned around something. But more importantly, using purpose to make these really hard trade-offs is what I think really aligns an organization about what you're going to do. I gave you lots of statistics. I will include those in the article I published on Friday around this topic. But the thing that I see over and over again is that purpose isn't something that necessarily just is a cost. It is a driver of growth. Because when everyone is aligned on why you exist, about who you're serving, how you're going to do it, what are the metrics that matter, when you have that strong alignment, it all leads to being very focused on what you want to get accomplished, the impact you want to have, and you're not wasting your time trying to figure out, well, what are we trying to do? Being at competing odds about how you're going to be existing in the world. So I do find, again, you saw from that study, that alignment around an authentic purpose drives growth. That growth is in many ways correlated with, again, having that authentic purpose. So just a couple last statements here. Rania shares that purpose is mission and vision and identity. All of these things come and are at the heart of the company. Thank you for pointing that out. And Sanjay also has this other comment that COVID has given us purpose to think about it seriously, define for organizations and for ourselves. Oh, that's what you were talking about, Sanjay, this balance between areas of the life is that, again, because you have a stronger purpose, you understand where these areas of your personal professional life intersect and how they support each other, but also where you make those trade-offs, because we know sometimes that we can get a little bit off balance and not in harmony with these two really important parts of our life. And when we are clear about what our purpose is in both of those areas, we can create that harmony. All right, that's what I got for today. I want to thank you all for joining. I will be taking next week off because it is the July 4th holiday, and I can guarantee you I'm going to be watching fireworks Monday night. So I'm giving myself a break on Tuesday to take that day off. But I'll be back again the following week on July 12th. So we'll be seeing you in the live stream then again, as always, at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock East Coast time, and 5 o'clock here in the UK, right, Elliot? 5 o'clock. My time zone things are off. So thank you so much for joining, and I wish you all a great 2 weeks, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.